Eric asks, I have a dual AMD motherboard with a 24-bay enclosure with a SAS backplane and card. My needs are simple. I need a file server and a place to back up all of my home computers, PCs with Windows 10 and Macs. What OS NAS software do you suggest to me? Before we decide what software you should use, I think you should really take a look at your hardware and make sure that it's up to what I would call minimum standards. It's not really that big of a deal, but the fact that you have a dual AMD motherboard is already kind of tipping me off that it's probably not something that you should be running. I don't really like dual Opterons. They're not very efficient. They pull a ton of power, they put out a ton of heat, and they're not very modular in the way that the Intel Xeon systems are, where you can kind of share consumer components and enterprise components, changing things like the cooling system or upgrading the processors. It's not as easy. So take a look at that and see if that's actually a system you want to run. You didn't specify what type of SAS your backplane is. It could be SAS 1. It actually is pretty likely that it's SAS 1, so you might be limited to 2 terabyte drives. That's an important thing to know before you start making decisions and moving forward with your software as well. And the fact that you have 24 bays is quite a lot, so hopefully it's SAS 2, then that means you can start filling it with decent sized hard drives. For a simple file server, you can really run whatever you want. If you want to run Windows, you could. I don't really recommend it. You could run Unraid. It's kind of expensive for a simple file server. So you can run FreeNAS. FreeNAS is, as the name says, free, but there are some constraints you have to think about, such as adding drives in blocks, and they all need to be the same size. So think about that as well. There's other options such as Open Media Vault or Xpanology or SnapRaid. I would probably recommend Unraid because that gives you the most flexibility, and I know I sound like a broken record saying that Unraid really is great and it is right now the king of home use NAS file systems. So ultimately, I would recommend taking a look at your hardware setup and making sure it's up to snuff before you go any further with your software setup, because otherwise you're going to run into some roadblocks or make things a little bit harder for yourself than they really need to be. I hope that answered your question, Eric, and let me know if I can help you in the future.